Imagine, it's 1974, Culver City, California. A single mother, Doris Bither, is living in a rundown house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's so bad, this house, that it's actually been condemned. Not just once, but twice.
Oh, jeez.
And then picture this. She starts experiencing something beyond explanation, something that makes her fear for her safety and her children's safety.
Yeah, that's definitely unsettling. The sources you provided really paint a chilling picture. What I think is really fascinating about this case is that Doris Bither's story, it's not just, your typical ghost story. It really drew attention from, serious paranormal investigators. Like, it even became the basis for, The Entity, that popular horror film.
Right.
And people are still talking about it today. It just sparks so much debate.
It really does. And that's why we're doing this deep dive. We've got eyewitness accounts, we've got photographs, we've got, analysis from both sides, from believers and skeptics.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, so let's just start with Doris Bither herself. She was a middle-aged woman. She was trying to raise 4 children under really difficult circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, just living in a condemned house, that's a whole other layer of stress.
Right. Imagine just the instability of that situation.
It makes you think about the connection between, her difficult circumstances and what she was experiencing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this debate in the field, about whether personal trauma can kind of open you up to paranormal phenomena.
Right. It's a question we should keep in mind. So Doris, she was desperate for help.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up reaching out to these 2 paranormal investigators, Barry Taff and Carrie Gaynor.
Yeah, Barry Taff, he's kind of a big name in this field.
He is.
And she happened to overhear them talking about the supernatural in a bookstore.
I know. Talk about, being in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the wrong time, I guess, in this case.
Maybe both.
Right. It was the 1970s. It was this time when, interest in the occult and parapsychology, it was really surging.
Yeah, new religious movements, and there was just this fascination with the unexplained. It was everywhere.
It was, yeah, and I think that's important to keep in mind, like the context of this case.
Right, like what was going on, culturally at the time.
Yeah, exactly. So Barry and Carrie, even they were skeptical at first.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Doris's claims were really intense. She was describing physical and sexual assaults by these unseen entities.
Right, and those kinds of claims, they're always difficult. It makes sense that their first thought was to, maybe refer her to a psychiatric clinic.
Right, it's a natural response, I think,
Mm-hmm.
especially given how sensitive these claims are. But things took a really dramatic turn. Barry and Carrie ended up going back to Doris's house. After they kept hearing these reports of escalating paranormal activity from neighbors and friends.
It was like the activity was spilling out from the house.
Right. It was impacting, more than just Doris.
Right, and that's when they realized, this might be something more.
Yeah. And Barry, he described this house as this little shack, and there was this odor. He said it was like rotting flesh.
Oh God.
Yeah, it creates this really disturbing picture.
It's not just the visual, right? It's like you can almost smell it. It just pulls you in to the scene.
It does.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't enough, as they were talking in the kitchen, a heavy frying pan suddenly just flew towards them.
I read about that. It sounds terrifying.
Yeah, Barry said it was like this ballistic arc. It was this sudden unexplained movement of a physical object.
Right in front of them.
Right in front of them.
I mean, that must have been the turning point, right?
It was.
Like you go from being skeptical to think, okay, there's something really strange going on here.
Exactly. Now, the sources we have, they don't give us a whole lot of information about Doris's life before all of this started. We know she had a difficult upbringing, that she struggled with addiction.
Yeah, and the Bither household was known to be pretty chaotic.
It was.
A lot of turmoil. It's almost like trying to solve a puzzle with some pieces missing.
Right. We have these glimpses, but it's hard to get the full picture. But there is this one chilling detail. Doris's son, Brian Harris, he remembers this old woman warning Doris about an evil presence in the house before any of this activity started.
Oh wow, that's like something out of a movie.
It is.
Like
right.
a premonition or something.
It's really eerie, and from there things escalated really dramatically. Moving objects, disembodies voices, attacks on Doris and her children. I mean, it sounds like the house was in complete chaos.
Yeah.
And what Doris described, these spectral rapes, that's particularly disturbing.
Yeah, those claims they're really hard to talk about.
They are.
There's no physical evidence, no outside witnesses, so it's impossible to really know.
Right, to verify, to disprove.
Yeah.
It's this really difficult part of the story. What's also interesting is that these attacks, these physical and sexual attacks, they seem to have stopped once the investigation began.
Oh, really? That is interesting. Like as soon as more people are around.
Yeah, more people were in the house.
Well, it makes you wonder, about the entities, what their motivations were.
Right, like were they affected by the presence of others? Did their behavior change because of that? It just makes the mystery even deeper.
It really does.
So let's talk about the investigation itself. The UCLA parapsychology team, they were the ones who took on the case, and they had these limitations right from the start. They had very limited funding, and Dr. Thelma Moss, who was the lab's director, she was really skeptical.
Right, Dr. Thelma Moss. She was, a respected figure in the field, but also, very grounded in science.
Very much so.
So I imagine that created some tension.
It did, and it really impacted their approach. They relied on pretty basic equipment, photography, temperature gauges, a Geiger counter, sound recording equipment.
It was the 70s, right? The technology wasn't quite what it is today.
It wasn't. So they were doing the best they could with what they had.
Right, trying to document and understand.
Exactly. And they did try to communicate with these entities, but the results, they were ambiguous. They never really got any clear messages.
That's not uncommon in these cases, though.
Yeah.
It's hard to get that clear communication, that definitive proof.
It is. It often just leads to more questions.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that are hard to explain, the investigation really focused on this strange phenomena, these orbs of light.
Orbs of light.
Barry Taft described them as corpuscular masses of light, essentially clusters of light particles.
Oh, I've heard that term before. Corpuscular masses of light. It sounds very, very technical. So essentially what we're talking about is like these tiny luminous particles clustering together to form these balls of light.
Exactly. And they were often this lime green color, and they seemed to vary in size and intensity.
That's interesting.
And what's even more intriguing is that these orbs, they were reportedly responsive to the investigators' requests. And even to Doris's emotional state.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. But trying to capture them on film, I mean, that must have been really difficult.
It was. They ended up with a lot of blurry, inconclusive pictures.
Right, because trying to capture something that fleeting, that unpredictable.
Right.
It's like trying to bottle lightning.
It is. There is this one photo, though, that really stands out. It shows Doris sitting on her bed, and there's this arc of light that seems to be passing over her head.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one. It's pretty famous in the context of this case.
It is. And the investigators, they interpreted this as evidence of an independently moving orb.
Right. But then again, there's the photo analyst, Kenny Bid, who argued that the image doesn't really match what the investigators said.
Right.
He pointed out that, the poster board that they described using to create this controlled environment, it's not even in the picture.
Right.
So he's saying, maybe it's just a reflection or even, maybe some kind of manipulation of the photo.
It's a good example of how evidence in these kinds of cases, it can be open to different interpretations.
It definitely highlights the need to be critical. You have to consider all the possibilities.
We do. And we have to remember, this is the 1970s. Photography wasn't as advanced as it is today.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
even the investigators, they admitted that they made mistakes with their camera settings.
They did. And then the investigation came to a pretty abrupt end when Dr. Thelma Moss, the lab director who was initially skeptical, she finally visited the house.
Oh, okay.
And even though she was a parapsychologist, she didn't personally witness anything unusual. So, they had a few blurry photographs. They had Doris's accounts, which couldn't be verified.
Right, and that was it?
That was it.
Yeah.
So Dr. Moss decided to end the investigation.
It's understandable in a way, if you're approaching it from a scientific perspective and you're not seeing anything concrete.
Right. And it shows that even in a field like parapsychology, there are different levels of belief and different approaches.
Absolutely. There's always that tension between subjective experience and objective proof.
Always.
Yeah.
So after the investigation was over, Doris moved to a new house, but but she didn't leave a forwarding address.
Oh, so they lost contact.
Yeah, it made it hard for the investigators to keep in touch. But then there was this really interesting twist. During the production of The Entity, that horror film based on Doris's experiences,
Right, right.
the filmmakers actually helped Barry and Carrie reconnect with Doris.
Oh, wow.
So it opened this whole new chapter in the story.
Like the story, it just kept pulling them back in.
It did. And when they reconnected, Doris revealed that the paranormal activity, it hadn't stopped.
Oh, no.
She said it had actually intensified
Yeah.
and even spread to neighboring homes.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't tied to the house itself.
Right. And during one visit, Barry and Carrie, they saw a vase just fly off a table. And they heard these strange sounds they couldn't explain. And then their recorder, it just turned off.
That's really creepy. It makes you think it was attached to her somehow.
It does. Doris moved again, this time to San Bernardino. And she continued to report paranormal activity, but eventually they lost contact with her again.
So the mystery continues. Was it paranormal or was it, something else?
We don't know.
Right.
Sources don't give us a clear answer.
And that's part of what makes it so fascinating, right?
That is.
It keeps us guessing. We have, on the one hand, Barry Taff. He really believed that Doris's case was a genuine poltergeist outbreak.
He was really affected by what he saw.
He was, and he cited those orbs of light and the moving objects as the main evidence.
Right.
And then you have, skeptics like Benjamin Radford, and he proposed a very different perspective. He thought that the presence of the investigators, it might have actually made things worse for Doris.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's saying that by focusing on paranormal explanations, it could have, unintentionally amplified her psychological distress.
Like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Right, like a feedback loop. It's hard to say for sure, but
Yeah.
but the fact remains that Doris Bither, she was a woman facing a lot of challenges, and she was trying to find help.
She was. And regardless of the cause, her experiences were real to her.
Absolutely. They cause her real fear, real suffering. And that's what makes this case so compelling. It makes us confront the limits of what we know. Where does psychology end and the paranormal begin?
Right.
It challenges us to think about what's even possible.
It does. And there's one more detail. Doris passed away in 1999. She was only 59.
Oh, wow.
Respiratory failure.
That's really sad. A life, marked by so much hardship.
It is.
Yeah.
And her son, Brian, he said that she was harassed by these paranormal forces right up until the end.
It's a haunting thought, that these experiences, whatever they were, they never really left her.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Were they with her to the very end?
It does. It really makes you think about the nature of trauma, the power of belief. These are the mysteries of the human experience.
They are. And even without definitive answers, Doris Bither's case, it's left a mark on paranormal research and popular culture.
It has. It's a story that continues to fascinate people. It unsettles people. It raises more questions than it answers. And that's what makes it so captivating.
And that's what makes it a perfect topic for a deep dive.
Yeah.
It makes us think critically. We have to weigh the evidence. We have to be open to different perspectives.
It reminds us that sometimes the most intriguing mysteries are the ones that are never solved.
They are. They keep us searching. They keep us questioning.
They make us realize how much we don't know.
So before we wrap up our exploration of Doris Bither's haunting, I just want to take a moment to think about what we've uncovered.
Yeah, we've looked at eyewitness accounts, we've analyzed photos, we've considered skeptical explanations, we've considered paranormal explanations.
Oh, yeah?
For what happened in that condemned house in Culver City.
We've seen how this case that started in relative obscurity, it went on to inspire a horror film.
Right.
And it's still captivating people all these decades later.
And it's made us think about how difficult it is to understand these events that don't fit neatly into categories, events that blur the lines between what's psychological and what's paranormal.
And through it all, we've gotten glimpses into the life of Doris Bither and her experiences, whether they were paranormal or psychological. They were profound. They really affected her.
Absolutely. And that alone makes her story, worthy of our attention.
It does. It makes us think about the limits of human understanding.
It does. It makes us think about the power of belief and just the complex relationship between our inner world and the world around us.
It does. So as we conclude our deep dive into Doris Bither's story, what stands out to you? What resonates most?
Well, for me, it's that the mystery remains. The lack of concrete answers. That's what makes it so fascinating. It makes you think about the nature of reality. It makes you think about the limits of our perception,
Mhm.
and it makes you think about the possibility that there are things out there that we just don't understand yet.
I agree. It's the unanswered questions, the doubts. That's what makes this story so captivating. It's a reminder that sometimes the most compelling stories are the ones that don't have easy answers.
They are the ones that leave you with more questions than you started with.
Exactly. And we want to encourage you to keep exploring.
Yeah.
Delve into Doris Bither's case. Come to your own understanding of what might have happened.
Right. And as always, we would love to hear your thoughts.
We would.
Share your perspectives, your insights, your questions. You can find us on social media. Just use the hashtag the deep dive.
Let's keep this conversation going. And to make sure you don't miss any of our future deep dives, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast.
We'll be back soon with another journey into the depths of knowledge. Exploring the mysteries of the world around us.
So stay curious, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.
We will. Yeah, it's almost like the mystery just wouldn't let go.
I know. It's like it kept drawing everyone back in.
Right back into Doris's story.
And when they finally reconnected, Doris said that the paranormal activity, it hadn't stopped at all. In fact, she claimed it had actually gotten worse.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and even spread to the houses nearby.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't the house itself.
Right, right. And during one visit, Barry and Carrie, they actually saw a vase just fly off a table.
No way.
And they heard these weird sounds, like they couldn't explain them. And then get this, their recorder, the one they were using, it just turned off.
Oh, that's spooky.
I know. It really makes you think like maybe whatever she was experiencing, it was attached to her.
Yeah, like it followed her, not the location.
Yeah, exactly. And Doris moved again, this time to San Bernardino, and she kept reporting paranormal activity, but eventually they lost contact with her again.
So the mystery remains. Was it really paranormal, or was there, something else going on?
Unfortunately, it's the sources we have, they don't really give us a clear answer.
Right, but that's part of what makes this case so fascinating.
It is. It keeps us guessing.
It really does. We have, on one hand, we have Barry Taff, and he really believed that this was, a genuine poltergeist outbreak. He cited the orbs of light, the objects moving as primary evidence.
He seemed pretty convinced.
Oh, he was. And then you have the skeptics, people like Benjamin Radford.
Yeah.
And he had a completely different take. He thought that maybe the paranormal investigators, by being there, they actually made things worse.
Oh, how so?
Well, he argued that by focusing so much on paranormal explanations, it might have just amplified, Doris's distress.
Intensified it.
Yeah, and maybe even, made her experiences more extreme. It's kind of like a chicken and egg situation.
Right.
Like, did the paranormal activity cause her distress, or did her distress fuel the paranormal activity?
It's a tough question.
It is. It's almost impossible to answer.
Mm.
But what's clear is that Doris, she was going through a lot.
She was.
And she was just trying to get help.
She was. And regardless of what was causing it, her experiences were real to her. She described them so vividly, and they obviously caused her a lot of fear and suffering.
Absolutely. And I think that's something important to remember. Regardless of whether you believe in the paranormal or not, her experiences were real.
They were.
And that's what makes this case so compelling. It forces us to think about what we know. What are the limits of our understanding?
Right.
Where does psychology end and the paranormal begin? And it makes us question, like, what's even possible?
It really does. And there's one more detail that I think adds another layer to all of this. Doris, she passed away in 1999. She was only 59 years old.
Oh, wow.
Respiratory failure.
That's so young. She had a really tough life.
Yeah, she did. And her son, Brian, he maintains that she was plagued by this paranormal harassment right up until her death.
Oh, gosh. That's a really chilling thought. The idea that these experiences, whatever they were, they just never let her go.
Right. It makes you wonder, like were those unseen forces, whatever they were Were they with her until the very end?
It really makes you think,
Yeah.
about trauma, about belief, about the mysteries of human experience. Even without those clear-cut answers, Doris Bither's case, it's had a real impact on paranormal research and pop culture.
It really has. It's a story that keeps fascinating people. It unsettles people. It raises all these questions and doesn't give us the answers.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so captivating.
Yeah.
It is.
We have Barry Taff, who remained absolutely convinced that Doris Bither's case was a genuine poltergeist outbreak. And he pointed to the orbs of light, the moving objects, as his evidence.
Yeah, he seemed really affected by what he saw.
He did. And then on the other hand, you have skeptics like Benjamin Radford who argued that the very presence of the paranormal investigators might have actually made things worse for Doris.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he theorized that focusing on paranormal explanations might have inadvertently amplified her distress.
Like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Right, like a feedback loop. It's really hard to say for sure, but the bottom line is that Doris Bither was a woman dealing with some really serious challenges, and she was looking for help.
She was, and no matter what the cause was, her experiences were real to her.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this case so compelling. It makes us confront the limits of what we know.
Yeah.
Like, where does psychology end and where does the paranormal begin? It challenges us to question our assumptions about what's possible, what's real.
It does. And there's one more detail that I think adds another layer to all this. Doris passed away in 1999. She was just 59.
Oh, wow. That's so young.
Respiratory failure.
A life marked by so much hardship.
It really was. And her son Brian, he maintains that she was harassed by these paranormal forces right up until her death.
Oh gosh, that's a chilling thought, to think that those experiences, whatever they were, that they never really let her go.
It really does make you think, like were those unseen forces, whatever they were they with her to the very end?
It really makes you think about the nature of trauma, about the power of belief, the mysteries of human experience. Even without clear-cut answers, Doris Bither's case has had a real impact on paranormal research, on popular culture.
It has. It's a story that continues to fascinate people, unsettle people, raise all these questions without providing the answers. And I think that's what makes it so captivating. It really is. And it's why we wanted to do this deep dive. It makes us think critically. It makes us weigh the evidence. It makes us, be open to different perspectives.
It reminds us that sometimes the most interesting mysteries, they're the ones that are never solved.
Right. They're the ones that keep us searching, keep us questioning.
And they remind us how much we just don't know.
They really do. So before we wrap up our exploration of Doris Bither's haunting, I just want to take a moment to kind of think about everything we've learned.
Yeah. We've examined eyewitness accounts, we've looked at the photographs, we've considered the skeptical explanations, we've considered the paranormal explanations.
We really have?
For everything that happened in that condemned house in Culver City.
Right. We've seen how a case that started, basically unknown, went on to inspire a horror film, and is still captivating people all these years later.
And we've grappled with, how difficult it is to really understand these events that don't fit neatly into our categories, events that blur the lines between what's psychological and what's paranormal.
Right. And through it all, we've gotten these glimpses into Doris Bither's life and her experiences, whether they were paranormal or psychological. They were profound.
Absolutely. And that in itself makes her story worthy of our attention and our reflection.
It does. It makes us think about the limits of human understanding, the power of belief,
Yeah.
and the really complex relationship between our inner world and the world around us. It really does.
Yeah.
So as we conclude our deep dive into Doris Bither's story,
Okay.
I'm just curious, what stands out to you the most?
Well, I think for me, it's the fact that the mystery endures. We don't have those concrete answers, and that's what makes it so fascinating. It makes you think about the nature of reality. It makes you think about our own limitations, what we can perceive, and it raises the possibility that there are things out there that we just don't understand yet.
I completely agree. I think it's those unanswered questions, those lingering doubts that make this story so captivating. It's a reminder that sometimes the The best stories, the most compelling stories are the ones that don't have those easy answers.
Right, the ones that leave you with more questions than you started with.
Exactly. And we encourage you, to keep exploring, to
Yeah.
look into Doris Bither's case, to come to your own conclusions about what happened.
Absolutely. And as always, we would love to hear your thoughts, to hear your perspectives, your insights, any questions you might have. You can find us on social media. Just use the hashtag the deep dive.
Let's keep the conversation going. And to make sure you don't miss any of our future deep dives, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast.
We'll be back soon with another journey into the depths of knowledge. Exploring the mysteries of the world around us.
So stay curious, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.
We will.
Well, we've really gone deep, haven't we, into this haunting of Doris Bither.
Mhm.
It's a case that, it just keeps fascinating and baffling people.
It does. It's one of those stories that really takes you to the edge of what you think you know and then leaves you with more questions than answers.
It does, and maybe that's the real point of exploring these kinds of mysteries. Sometimes it's not about finding those definitive answers. It's about expanding our sense of wonder and acknowledging that there are still mysteries out there.
Exactly. I mean, the Doris Bither case, it reminds us to approach these topics with an open mind, but also with a critical eye and maybe a healthy dose of skepticism too.
Right, right. And I think most importantly, it reminds us to approach these stories with compassion, for the people at the center of them. Because regardless of where you stand on the whole paranormal thing, there's no denying that Doris Bither, she went through something truly unsettling, something that really, really affected her life.
No question about it. And that alone, makes her story worth examining, worth thinking about. It encourages us to really consider the limits of what we know, what we can understand, and the power of belief and how our inner world, our thoughts, our beliefs, how they interact with the world around us.
Absolutely. So as we close our deep dive into this haunting of Doris Bither, we just want to leave you with this. What do you believe?
Keep exploring, keep those questions coming, engage in those thoughtful conversations about the things we don't fully understand.
And thank you for joining us on this journey into the unknown. Until next time, stay curious.